Good evening, and thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. This is our second round of public engagement on the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Access Strategy, or PROSA. We're very happy to have you with us tonight as we can share what we've learned through this process to date and hear your comments and address any questions you may have. My name is Ben Boxer, and I serve as the Public Information Officer for the Fairfax County Park Authority. Before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items we need to get through for the record. First of all, tonight's meeting is a staff-led virtual public meeting. And although we may have elected or appointed officials joining us this evening, I want to reiterate that this is a community meeting and no official action or votes will be taken on any part of this project tonight. This electronic meeting is provided through dedicated video and audio conferencing and may be accessed on the Fairfax County Park Authority website. The public may also participate by telephone by calling 888-270-9936 and entering the access code 411406. You can access our project website by going to fairfaxcounty.gov/parks. Using the search bar at the top of the page, just enter PROSA. That's PROSA, and you'll be directed to the website. This meeting is being recorded, and a copy of this recording will be posted to the website following the meeting. For those of you who might be joining us for the first time, PROSA is really laying the groundwork and long-term direction for Park Authority to improve access to parks and provide an equitable park system for all Fairfax County residents. The outcomes of this multi-year effort will inform the Park Authority's capital improvement program and future land acquisition decisions. It will also align the Park Authority's capital planning priorities with major countywide initiatives, such as the countywide strategic plan, Active Fairfax, and One Fairfax. Tonight, we will be sharing our progress to date on the consideration items that are going into this revolutionary new tool. And we are eager to hear your feedback regarding components that you're happy to see and perhaps some things you think may need to be added to the strategy. Your participation in this discussion is extremely valuable to this process, and we look forward to hearing your questions and comments this evening. So how is this going to work? For the duration of the meeting, we'll be happy to accept comments and questions using the Zoom chat box. You can put your comments in the chat and we will share them with others and respond. We're very pleased to have a contingent of our project staff on hand with us this evening to monitor the chat and help ensure that we capture your questions and comments effectively. Prior to the Q&A session, we'll go over a few more tools available to us to take your questions when we reach that point. I am now pleased to turn our time over to our PROSA project manager and long-range planning section supervisor for the Park Authority, Stephanie Cornejo. She will provide an overview of the draft summary report and set the stage for our Q&A session and discussion of next steps. Stephanie?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for your time tonight. We appreciate you joining us today, whether it's the first time or if you're a familiar face and involved in the project. Before we get started on the nitty-gritty of PROSA, I do want to start off by sharing the Park Authority's mission. The Park Authority is guided by our mission to enrich the quality of life for the community through an enduring park system that provides a healthy environment, preserves natural and cultural heritage, offers inspiring recreational experiences, and promotes healthy lifestyles. The county's park recreation needs are served by the Fairfax County Park Authority. The Park Authority manages over 23,000 acres spread across 420 park sites, a variety of park amenities that includes over 350 playgrounds, over 400 courts, over 260 fields, swimming pools, recreation centers, nature centers, lakefront parks, golf courses, natural and cultural resources, and over 335 miles of trails. So we're spearheading PROSA because of the Parks and Recreation System Master Plan goals and the Park Authority Strategic Plan's objectives and policies. Specifically, the strategic plan outlines an action step to develop and implement an approach to county park planning and capital projects that considers resource protection, service level delivery, equity, and recreation and community needs. So PROSA is a strategy and a framework to create an equitable park system where residents can access a quality park within a 10-minute walk from their home. The strategy will provide a path for improved park access and provide a balance of recreational experiences. To get there, the PROSA strategy will improve 10-minute walk access to parks, enhance access to complete park experiences, will also improve habitat connectivity, and then we'll take all that data and look at it through an equity lens. That's to say, factoring equity using demographics and socioeconomic data to help analyze and prioritize needs. I'll also highlight here that PROSA is the tool, it's not the results, so it's a data-driven approach to inform decision-making. Additionally, PROSA advances Fairfax County strategic plan priorities as well. So let's dive into each of these components. So looking at the 10-minute walk access, our goal is to identify which households can and cannot access a park authority park within a 10-minute walk from their home. We've historically considered proximity of residents to parkland as an important indicator of how well we're serving the community. And proximity looks at park access as a straight line, or as the crow flies, from the edge of a park to a given distance, like a half mile. However, today we're able to measure access to our public park entrances and consider the surrounding sidewalks, crosswalks, highways, and the street network to better account for physical access or physical walking distance to a park. And after looking at this goal, our findings show that while 52% of residents can access an FCPA park entrance within a 10-minute walk from their home, the remaining 48% of residents do not have access. They don't have the same access as others, so they don't have access to an FCPA park with a 10-minute walk from their home. And there are a variety of physical barriers that hinder access to parks. These barriers include large roadways and highways with limited or no pedestrian crossings, an absence of sidewalks or crosswalks, if there's a street network with limited connection points, or of course, natural features like a stream or a forested area contribute to these physical barriers. Identifying where gaps exist is our first step to providing and improving 10-minute walk access to park authority parks, followed by assessing the types of barriers that prevent such access. And to provide equitable access to parks, everyone should have safe access to parks at a 10-minute walk from their home. To improve them, we have 5 action items here. We have, first of all, we can enhance access by improving current access on existing parks. So that's adding a trailhead or park entrance where feasible. Also looking at parkland that is developable and seeing where we can improve access where maybe there's no park access right now. We can also continue to collaborate with partners to remove physical barriers, such as adding a crosswalk or adding a sidewalk to the street. We can also work hand in hand, as we have been and continue to, with the private sector to improve 10-minute walk access to privately owned but fully publicly accessible park spaces. And then additionally, we can focus our parkland acquisition, so purchasing and acquiring new parkland in areas that have a gap, right? So no park access. And as we turn to the next component of PROSA, we're going to look at complete park experiences and complete park access. So as we know, PROSA is a framework to improve park access, to improve 10-minute walk access across the county. But what do you do once you get there? And this element speaks to that component. So complete park experiences consist of 4 high-level recreation types. So looking at active recreation, passive contemplative recreation, social gathering recreation, social recreation, and natural cultural recreation. We'll dive into each of those in just a moment. I'd like to highlight here that we learned from our first phase of public engagement back in the fall that residents really want to be able to enjoy a variety of park experiences. We heard from over 700 residents at that time, and they clearly, their feedback really clearly reflected there's a lot of value to have a different type of experiences in parks. When you think about when you visit parks, you may visit with a variety of family members and have a social gathering and picnic enjoyment. You might go to the playground with your kids, nieces or nephews or other families. And people use parks for a variety of different reasons, a variety of different ways. Also out here for the complete park experiences, it's important to note that not all parks would have these 4 major types of recreation experiences, but that these experiences should be accessible to everyone. And what I mean by that is so that everyone has access to a variety of recreation experiences. They should have access to that 10-minute walk or a 5-minute drive from their home. Just to kind of illustrate this for a moment, if you have let's say a small park nearby that a 10-minute walk and that has a playground and a picnic facility and a walking trail. But then another park, maybe within a 5-minute drive, offers access to some sort of a meditative experience or relaxing experience. So just again, think about access to complete park experiences. But let's dive into those a little bit more. So we're going to take a walk through our 4 main types of recreation experiences. You can see on the screen here that there is something for everyone. And really, there should be something for everyone at our parks from 8 years to 80 years old. Active recreation looks at breaking a sweat, so encouraging physical activity and play, like using sport courts, fields, playgrounds, trails, or fitness equipment, gets your heart pumping. Next, we have passive contemplative recreation, so that offers a place for reflection and relaxation and mindfulness. Park amenities for this type of recreation experience could include outdoor seating areas, walking paths, trails, and gardens. Then looking at social gathering recreation, that could include enjoying picnic areas, community gardening, a sitting area, or going to an event. It facilitates community interactions and connections. And last but not least, we have natural culture recreation experiences that provide opportunities to connect with the outdoors and nature, as well as present day and historical heritage, such as enjoying nature trails or wildlife habitats or visiting historical and cultural landmarks.
Stephanie, could I ask a question, please? Stephanie?
Hi, Dave. Sorry.
Hi. I'm our park coordinator for our association, and we have a question that constantly comes up, and that's with people who want to do the social recreation, like a children's birthday party, event like that. The association ourselves have held concerts where we've had bands in the park. But the question becomes, does that have to be registered with the county park district, or is it just first come, first serve?
So, Dave, if I could, I believe large gatherings we have reservations at some picnic shelters.
Yes.
And otherwise, the park is open to the public and can be used for gatherings. But large organized gatherings, we typically like to have reserved through our picnics website. I hope that's helpful to you. If we could, moving forward, I will take a look at that and research that. If we could, we'd like to work through the presentation. If you do have questions as we go through, please go ahead and enter them into the chat and we can answer them all collectively. We will be going through every question we receive in the chat. And that way we can get through the presentation and open up our Q&A session to keep on time here for this evening. We appreciate the question, Dave, and we'll look forward to speaking more as we finish here.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Dave. So I'm going to turn to just another component of complete park experiences here. And we're going to go walk through those action steps, those proposed action steps. So really to improve complete park experiences and access to complete park experiences, we could improve the balance of recreation experiences at existing parks. So for example, if there's a park with a lot of sport courts, maybe there's an opportunity for us to add a picnic pavilion as an example, right? Conceptual example. Think about that social recreation or another opportunity there. Again, that balance of recreation experiences and access. We can also look at Park Authority parks where there is no undevelopable parks, right? Not natural resource parks, but developable parks here, where we could do whole park development. So if there isn't any park amenities on it right now, we can prioritize that park land and develop it to reflect the access to a variety of experiences. We'll also collaborate with the private sector. So when they have a privately owned but publicly accessible park space, we can work with them to talk through the variety of experiences offered. And then also we can acquire parkland based on experience needs. And so we're going to turn to the third component of PROSA. We're going to look at habitat connectivity. And really, when we look at habitat connectivity, we want to identify opportunities to improve habitat health at existing parks and identify whether there are opportunities to expand habitat connectivity through existing parkland or potential future parkland acquisitions. We're looking at the health of habitats. That is to say, looking at the prevalence of invasive plant species, and then also looking at the overall tree canopy at each park. And so as we know, natural resources play an essential role in providing critical environmental and ecosystem services, as well as offering a high quality of life for residents. It's also part of the Park Authority's mission to preserve natural heritage. We have 3 primary strategies to support habitat connectivity. So looking at the tree canopy aspect, where there are park development projects coming in, like for example, if we're building a playground or if we're adding a field, we can look at make sure the sidewalks are lined with trees leading up to those amenities. And I'll highlight here the tree plantings are not to replace meadows or other environmentally sensitive areas at parks. Also, we can look at habitat health by prioritizing areas with higher invasive plant species. And then we can also improve habitat connectivity in the county when acquiring parkland as a third action step and strategy within this. And most importantly, we'll use an equity lens to analyze and prioritize projects. We'll utilize One Fairfax, the Fairfax County's One Fairfax, as a foundation, using One Fairfax as tools and data. As you can see on the screen here, One Fairfax uses 8 different demographic and socioeconomic indicators. The areas in the county where there is a high occurrence of these, what we're calling opportunity areas. They're called opportunity areas because this is where there's the greatest opportunity for impact for our residents. We're using US Census data, and our approach is based on the county's vulnerability index as a foundation for our analysis and findings. Additionally, our equity lens looks at density to understand how many people are being served in the area. And so really, our equity lens commits us to intentionally consider equity when prioritizing park and recreation needs, the data-driven approach to help inform our decision-making, and then also recognizing opportunity areas. Again, that's the high and very high vulnerability index areas in conjunction with density will help us understand who is being served and the greater impact that we can provide. So I'm going to give an example here. Let's look at North Hill Park. So we're going to zoom over just east of Huntley Meadows, those of you who are familiar with that area. There's also Route 1 nearby. There's a Denny's across the street from North Hill Park, and then further down there's a Walmart and Costco. And so we're going to use, remember, PROSA is not the result, it's the tool, and it's a data-driven lens for decision-making. So we're going to dive into this. I'll also preface that this park site, North Hill Park, is pretty much ready to open. It's been 10 years in the making. So before the construction of this park, there were no public park entrances and no built amenities. But while this park was not chosen for development because of PROSA, again, those decisions were made 10 years ago. I want to show how the different lenses come into play here. And we're going to have a look at that. So we have the different Park Authority parks here on the screen. I'm going to layer in the opportunity areas. So again, that's our high and very high vulnerability index areas. And that's the hatched area we see on the screen here. And then now we're going to add another component of our equity lens. You see on the screen here on the right-hand side, a density map. It's showing very high and high density. So it's just more people served in that area. And again, that's what our equity lens looks at One Fairfax principles of vulnerability index, and then also the density map. And so now we're going to layer in what that 10-minute walk access looks like before the North Hill Park entrance were recently added. So you'll see here on the screen in the orange, 10-minute walk access to FCPA parks. You'll see there's some gaps. So there isn't orange. That means there's a 10-minute walk access gap to our parks. And you can see that the orange areas are not perfect circles or shapes. That's because there are a variety of physical barriers that prevent safe walkable access to parks. It could be the street grid. It could be their dead ends. It could be large roadways. We know Route 1's a very large roadway. It could be highways with limited or no pedestrian crossings or an absence of sidewalks. So going back to the development of North Hill Park, the construction project in this park includes 4 new park entrances where previously none existed. It also includes the new amenities such as the outdoor fitness equipment, playground, walking paths, a basketball court, and a pickleball court. And this project not only adds access to the park, but also speaks to the complete experience aspect that we've been talking about here for PROSA. So once the park opens, it'll have new amenities and people have access to active recreation, passive contemplative recreation, social recreation here. So now if you watch closely on the screen here, we're going to add in those 4 new park entrances. And so they're marked by the yellow stars. You can see I'm going to put my cursor over the screen here. I'm going to toggle back and forth again, just so you can see that one more time. So you can see here, but by adding 4 new park entrances, actually, it improves walkable park access to nearly 4,000 people. And you can see that again, looking on the right-hand side of that density map to see the impact of that. We'll do this one more time, if my computer lets me. Sorry, I think it's being a bit stubborn. But let's go through this project once more. So we're going to run through the PROSA lens. So this project improves 10-minute walk access where before no park access existed. Again, that's nearly 4,000 residents who now have walkable access to a park with the new public park entrances. Everyone should have access to a variety of park experiences, and the construction of the outdoor fitness area, the playground, the walking paths, the basketball court, and pickleball courts provide access to these different complete park experiences. And then while the PROSA lens includes habitat connectivity and specifically the quality of habitats, this project's mainly focused on access to parks and the park experiences. Doesn't include improving natural habitat, but it can be in the future. And then last but not least, using our PROSA equity lens here, there are improvements in our opportunity areas and areas with a greater population. It's kind of turning to PROSA in practice. The PROSA strategy, again, is not the results. It's the approach. It's a data-driven approach to guide park investments so that all communities can have access to a quality park, no matter where they live in Fairfax County. These broad strategies are intended to just be a high-level approach to identify and prioritize areas for park investments and improvements, like our capital improvements plan, acquisitions, trails and development, park assessments, and also park development projects. So I've been doing a lot of talking, and now we're going to head to our poll session. So we're going to drop in a link in the chat in a moment. We have a poll to gauge from everyone just initially, how effectively do you think our 4 PROSA strategies will accomplish our objectives here? And so we dropped the link in the chat. You can take a moment to please select the answer, what your gauge of it is. And you'll see after you submit your answer, you'll see the results in live time on your own screen. So let's give everyone a moment to that. We wanted to hear from you. How effective do you think the PROSA strategies improve 10-minute walk access to Park Authority parks? How effective are they in enhancing access to complete park experiences? How effective are they to enrich habitat connectivity between environmental corridors? And then how effective are they to analyze and prioritize recreation needs and projects with an equity lens? Thank you all for taking time to add to the poll. We'll be checking in on it as well. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Ben for our open Q&A. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you all. We have a great start to our questions here in the chat. And we really appreciate the summary and the discussion, Stephanie, on that piece. Now it's time to hear from you all with us tonight. Before we get started, let me tell you about some of the Zoom features we'll be using to facilitate our discussion. First, you're more than welcome to continue entering your questions in the chat if you so choose. You may also raise your hand, and you can access that feature by selecting the reactions menu in the menu below the screen, and then selecting raise hand. We'll call on you one at a time, and you can unmute and ask your question or make your comment. Calling in is a bit complex, but doable. Should you wish to dial in and speak to us over the phone, please call the number 888-270-9936 and enter the code 411406. Once you dial in, the recorded message will ask you to press pound to join the meeting. Please note that if you're listening to the meeting online, there is a slight delay between the online meeting and the phone, so it may be challenging to hear both. Please, before you speak, please enter your name for the record and identify whether you're calling on your own behalf or you're representing an organization. To be considerate of everyone's time and make sure that everyone has an opportunity to ask their questions, we'll have a time limit set for 3 minutes for each question or comment, and I'll be keeping time, and then we'll proceed through the questions that we have through the evening. So without further ado, we'd like to open up the floor to any questions that are out there. And we do have some beginning here in the chat. I see we have a question straight for Stephanie. We can answer that one offline. Is there, can the public access your maps that show opportunity areas, density, and 10-minute walk data? It's a
great question, and thank you for it. So at this point in time, like I mentioned before, this is the strategy, it's not the results. And so right now we're talking only at a very high level, 50,000-foot level. So right now we don't have any maps available with those, with the density maps and other things. That may be something we look to in the future, but we're more so looking at a high level conceptual level right now.
All right. We have a hand. Mr. Albers, please, if you'd like to unmute and ask a question.
How does the PROSA strategy differ from the 2018 strategy? At that point in time, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
In 2018, there were a number of recommendations made. Is there a scorecard showing what was accomplished in that 5-year strategy? And then I've got some other questions maybe.
So this is Amy Vosper, Deputy Director with the Park Authority. Welcome, Howard. Haven't seen you in a little while, so it's nice to see your name at least again. So I think you're referring to the needs assessment?
No, the strategy.
The 2018 PROSA strategy?
I don't think it was called PROSA at that time. It was just the strategy for what the Park Authority was going to be.
The strategic plan?
Yes, concentrating on for the 5 years.
Okay, the strategic plan. Yes, actually, we do have, and we can send it to you. I don't have it off the top of my head, but we do have a year-end report, actually a couple year-end reports for the strategic plan of the goals that we accomplished. One of those goals was to move PROSA along to a point where it would be able to become that tool for future discussion and future decisions with the Park Authority. So, but I can definitely send that, send a link to you for that information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll put my email address in the chat for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's have, I see the next hand up we have is Matt Bright, I see on the screen. Matt?
Yes, thank you for having me. My name is Matt Bright. I work for Earth Sangha, so we're very involved with our Fairfax County Park Authority parks. Very excited to collaborate with you guys. Looking through the draft PROSA plan, I think there's a lot of interesting things. two kind of questions and comments that I would have is that how would some of the components of the 2014 Natural Resources Management Plan integrate with PROSA, most specifically the sort of components, of do no harm and the sort of inventory work that I know that Natural Resources branch folks have been working on. And then the other comment I have is that this is something that we've noticed over time, in part working with Park Authority ecologists on invasives removal and on restorations, that while increased access to parks is unequivocally a good thing to have, and people deserve access to their parks. I personally walk to Royal Lake Park almost every morning to begin my day, so I'm very thankful to live in an area with ready access. But we do also see that those can become pathways for invasive species into some of our parks. And so I'm hoping as part of the PROSA lens is also sort of being aware of potentially the need for follow-up and inventorying of these things after all these amenities are created.
Yeah, Matt, I'll take that as far as the natural resource side. Brendan Haniff, I'm the planning director for parks. Excuse me. When we decide to start a new project, first off, yes, natural resources will be taken into account during PROSA, especially for habitat connectivity, but we will be designated parks for natural resources or for recreation during that process as we review parks that we're going to maybe develop or not develop. Secondly, as far as invasives concerned, that's a problem, as you know, everywhere. We are starting as a good example of this is we're going to do a lot more natural surface trails in the future. Those necessarily, because they're not 6 to 8 foot paved trails, those and then the shoulders, those lower the light coming in through the canopy and do suppress the grasses and some of the other invasives. And also we work on all of our projects with RMV directly in the planning for the project. And a lot of the projects for some of the smaller parks actually take out invasives before we start. So yeah, they're very much clued into what we do is from the planning and development side. And it's a very important part of what we do because, again, as you see, almost everywhere you go, we have a invasive species issue. So we are very active in trying to combat that, especially in the development of new parks.
Right. Thank you so much. That's great.
And thank you, Matt. Thank you for that question. Really appreciate it. Next hand I saw, I believe, was Renee Grebe. I hope I got that last name right.
Thanks. Yeah, Renee Grebe here from Nature Forward. I had a question about, I guess, twofold. One is bike access. I think walking is incredibly important, but bike access is related, and I think could also be a separate, interesting metric. Is that something that's been considered? If not to address, then maybe to just report on.
Thank you. Stephanie, you want to take that?
Yeah, absolutely, Renee. Thanks so much for your question and suggestion here. Bike access. One of the things that we're thinking about is one of the counties kind of consider like a companion strategy that's going on right now. It's called Active Fairfax, and that's specifically looking at improving active recreation, active transportation opportunities, like improving bike facilities across the county. And so we're definitely working hand in hand with the Fairfax County Department of Transportation's team on it to improve bike access to parks. And that's an area that we're considering for, kind of like a companion access is through the active transportation plan.
But is there a way to report on what minute bike ride access current parks have in the same way? I mean, I know Active Fairfax is a much broader thing, but this is a very park focused question in terms of how can people get to parks? And then the secondary question would be how can they park at parks with a bike, but that's separate.
Yeah, that's a great follow-up. I don't know the answer to that. I can get back to you, Renee.
I think it would be an interesting stat to present alongside of the walkability. Maybe not to address today, but just to know and understand. And I'll hold my next question until the next person goes.
Okay. One other comment too. This is Amy Vosper again. Renee, you bring up a great point. And I think we're at a point where we're just really launching this tool. And through these public meetings and public outreach, we're seeing that we've got a lot more to do. We're excited about the whole tool and what it can do, but I think there's so much more that we haven't even tapped into yet. So this is not going to stop in the next couple months, like, oh, here you go, it's a tool. We're going to keep on kind of building with it and building on it.
Thank you, Amy. Appreciate that. Mr. Sprague, I see your hand, please.
Hi, thanks. So I am the park coordinator for the Hillwood Association, which has the Azalea Park in it. Azalea is probably the smallest park you have. It's probably the farthest east park you have. The only services really provided by the park district is they empty our trash cans once a week and mow. And for the first month, our contractor quit mowing and we didn't even mow. So we mowed it for 2 weeks because we're having a concert in the park. So my question though is, you guys are bringing up invasive species several times. Is there a list of what you consider invasive? And the reason I ask that, I've been living here over 20 years and I've been park coordinator probably 12 or more. And about 12 or 15 years ago, we had a park person in and they ran through all the things we couldn't touch, you know, bamboo, poison ivy, all this stuff that the poison ivy is where all the kids run along. We have a little creek and stuff. So what I'd like to find is what you really consider invasive. And if it's invasive, does that mean that it's allowed to be taken out without any issues? Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate your interest in the topic. What I would do is I'm going to go ahead and put a link in the chat here to a public works website. And this is a joint county initiative that's putting together an invasives website with information about various invasive species in Fairfax County. That being said, the safest thing to do if you see it in the park is to give us a call. I'm sure because we'd like to coordinate those efforts to remove plant material from the parks with our staff. But that being said, I would be happy to send you that link to invasive species.
Thank you.
So,
Amy, do you have anything to add to that?
Dave, just so Ben's going to send you the link to kind of the county internal, kind of our joint working group. But Renee just put the invasive species state or Commonwealth of Virginia list in the chat, and also Matt just put a link to. And if there's, we have invasive management specialists, and they are leaders across the county, and they develop teams of volunteers. So I know you've been doing some work in the Azalea Park for a long time, but maybe we can kind of coordinate a little bit more.
Okay, and the reason, and after that meeting with the park person, almost everybody from the association, from the way it was answered and dealt with, assumed it was because the park district didn't want to do the work.
So you mean the park authority? Yeah.
Park authority. Yes.
Yeah. Well, we have, over 23,000 acres, and we have just a couple area crews that do the whole county. So we are stretched to the limit, but that's why we kind of help. We try kind of figure out how to work with our residents and kind of create partnerships. So
and no problem. Our association's more than happy to jump in, dig up bamboo, spray and take care of poison ivy where all the little kids are running, things like that. I would like to be as politically correct as I could be, by asking the question rather than us usually just going ahead and doing it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And we've got your email, so we'll send out some info.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. And thanks to our team, it looks like we've got a few folks on sharing the same information. So that's a great resource. Appreciate your interest in invasives and hope these resources are helpful to you. Thanks for that comment. I see a new face or a new hand up. Mr. Jim Klein, please.
Yeah, this is Jim. Apologies for no video there. My bandwidth is kind of low. But I wanted to follow up on the bicycle issue, and I put kind of a comment in the chat as well. But I wanted to just give an example of how the bicycle access is really limits kids, especially to get to your parks. And one example is I'm on the, should say also that I'm on the Trail Sidewalk and Bikeway Committee representing Mount Vernon. This is just my own comments, not that of the committee. And when you ride a bike and go to Mount Vernon District Park, which is a great bike park that kids from all over use, but to get there you can't really ride a bike because you just can't get around all the barriers to that. And if there was some small, or if each destination, especially ones where you're encouraging bicycle use, could have better bike access, it would be a huge thing. So I really wish that bicycle access would be given, a much stronger position within the four goals that you've outlined. It's all great, by the way. I just want to say what a great job all this is. I just want bicycles to have a kind of a bigger presence in that, and I hope that that's something that you can expand upon as you, Ray and Renee and Amy, I think, as mentioned.
And Jim, this is Brendan again. You hit on a really good part of the bike access issue, that it's not necessarily like A to B to get to a park.
Yeah,
because there are so many barriers in place. And Stephanie mentioned some of the, there's everything from major roads to, significant secondary roads, the lack of sidewalks, other things. And it's not going to be a panacea, but we are working directly with our friends in DOT to identify areas where we can make changes. But it is putting that bike access, say walk/ride, in is something we're looking at as well, like Stephanie mentioned, into the soup.
Excellent. Thank you, Brendan.
Thank you, Brendan. And thank you, Jim. We really appreciate your participation and the validation of the work that we've been doing and the comment to focus on that, the bike transportation. Before we get too far down the list, I do want to bring a comment from the chat into the discussion. I see a comment from DB. The comment is, are apartment dwellings included in the program for 10-minute walkability? That's a great question.
Thank you, DB, for the question. So the answer is yes. So all homes, all residences, no matter where you are within Fairfax County, are considered. This is a county-wide approach, meaning everyone and all homes, like apartment dwellings, are included. Thank you for the question there.
And thank you. I see that the question was answered in the chat. I just want to make sure we got it on video for those watching following the meeting. So we really appreciate that. All right. I see a hand. Renee, please. Renee Grebe.
Well, I'll raise up the other question I don't think I'd answered. Can the public access the maps that show the opportunity areas, density, and 10-minute walk data?
Hi, Renee. Yes. Thank you for the question. We're going to add a link in the chat. There are links to the Fairfax County Vulnerability Index that includes the high and very high, average, low, and very low components. So you can see, the opportunity areas that way. And then the question was the density maps. Is that what I heard? The second part of the question.
I'm guessing maybe they're asking about the kind of the map you showed that have the yellow bubbles around the parks. Is that kind of map accessible?
Right now we're focusing on these high-level strategies, broad strategies. And so they're giving a PROSA as the tool and not the results. So those maps are not available or ready at this point. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They actually really don't exist yet. We've done a couple pilot maps that show kind of North Hill as we bring this information to our park board. So we really don't, we have like one or two, like the one that, but it's more just kind of pulling all the information that's out there together because our park locator is being updated. So that'll be with a better inventory. And so I think in the future, we hope to figure out how to cobble it all together, if that makes sense.
Great. I just wanted to raise that question before I asked mine, but my question was about, I really appreciated the looking at languages that folks speak and how accessible parks might be to them. How will that component go towards making decisions in parks? I know we have a story of seeing that only trash signs were in Spanish and English in one of the parks, and that didn't make the park feel very welcoming. So even if you can get to a park, if it's not accessible in your language, it's not a great experience. How will these decisions get used, or how will this information get used to make decisions in the parks?
Everybody's trying to figure out who's going to answer that one.
Yeah,
Brendan, did you want to take a crack at that, or do you want me to? Can you hear me, Brendan?
Oh, I'm sorry. Right now we're focused on basically print, getting messages out in different languages, either on the internet or on print. But signs are a big deal. We have a problem with signs to begin with, as far as just having enough signs to let people know where our facilities are and our rules and regulations. But we have a sign committee going right now that's going to continue to look at that, and we've got a prototype of some of our different signs. PROSA definitely could help with that, because it'll give us who we should be targeting for this information in our different parks. But that's a longer term goal, and that's going to take some time.
I think just to add to it, when our executive director went out to all 420 parks, that was one of the things that she actually really documented, or I don't know if documented is the right word, but really noticed in our park system. And especially when we're looking at different access points, in some cases, we don't even have a sign that says it's a park authority property, a park. So it is a big challenge, but I think in bringing up the point about, when we start to come down from the 30,000 foot level down to the neighborhood park, we are going to be sensitive and understand who goes to that park, who accesses that park, and then plan accordingly.
Wonderful question. Thank you. And thank you for the answers. Matt Bright, you have your hand up again.
Thanks for having me again. I had another question, potentially about a longer sort of time frame. I know that Fairfax County's planning development and land development services went through this sort of parking reimagined sort of thing recently, and it occurs to me that as a number of our parks hopefully gain more ways for folks to access them on foot, by bicycle, or however means, the parks that already have substantial sort of parking infrastructure and things like that, is PROSA something that would be used to sort of revisit whether parking lots should be ever sized down in the future and maybe turned into other sorts of amenities or natural features in some of our parks, where we might get more access coming from other means of transit?
Matt, I'll take that. Yeah, the parking reimagined focus is something we're actively involved in. It's actually helping us pinpoint areas where we need to put more bike racks, where we do have a good accessible for biking to get to our park entrances. That's just one example. We've been putting out additional bike racks in parks through grant funds for the last couple of years. As far as the parking lots, the new rules will allow us to decide the size of the parking lot. And that's going to be based on what's the park amenities. Are there shelters there? Are there ball fields there? Is the use concentrated on a weekend? We have to take all that into effect. So it won't be based on our land development standards as much anymore. It'll be based on what we plan for each park. we haven't talked about taking away parking, which I think that would be a great thing. But that's certainly something that we can think about as we especially if we change uses in a park. Right now, the parks that are heavily parked are the ones with the large shelters, large gathering areas, and in the fields.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. We have a question in the chat from DB, and this is an interesting question. If the maps are not available, can you provide your data to the Future of Lake Akating Task Force if requested for residential areas around the park? Amy, do you want to?
Sure. DB, I'm not sure what your first name is, but a couple of us are on the task, not on the task force, but are tracking with the task force in concert with staff from DPWS. If Chairman Bolova would like information from us, and she's actually asked already for some visitation numbers that we're going to be providing to the task force, we'll certainly try to provide any information that is relevant to your discussion and your outlook. I think that once the task force completes its work in trying to the discussion on the dredging, at the time that we're able to pick back up on our master planning efforts, that's a pretty good time as well to be able to kind of pull together some data and figure things out, or figure out what your questions are as well. So there could be two different timeframes. As we said before, we really don't have the maps. We've been cobbling together information to kind of show what how this information can be used. And I think that's something, you know, we could use as an example if we were asked to do an update to the task force.
Thank you, Amy. Appreciate that. And thank you for the question, DB. We appreciate your being here and sharing that question. At this time, were there any other questions? I believe there might have been a hand or two up and it's been taken down. We just want to make sure that there's no further questions in the audience this evening. Again, we're just looking to see with the elements that we shared in PROSA, these are consideration items that we've been able to pull together from a vast swath of community engagement. We want to make sure that we're on the right track. We want to hear from you in terms of if there's things you think are missing, if there are things that you really like that we're doing, to analyze our parks and to help shape our decision-making paradigm moving forward. All right. I think we've gotten every question in the chat. I'm just doing a quick check. It appears that we have, and I don't see any hands. So at this point, hearing and seeing no further questions, we can, at this point, we will be happy to bring our evening to a close. Before we do, we'd like to remind you that the public comment period will remain open through August 6th, and you can submit additional comments through our project website at any time. Please feel free to take a picture of the QR code on your screen, and it will take you to our project website. You can also access the website by going to fairfaxcounty.gov/parks and using the search bar at the top of the newly designed page on the county website. Just type in PROSA, that's PROSA. Click return and you'll see PROSA's webpage at the top of your search results. We also ask you to visit the site to sign up for project updates, submit comments and insights by taking our project survey, and utilize our communications toolkit and flyers to help share this information and message with your friends and neighbors. If you have any questions about the information shared this evening or about PROSA in general, please feel free to email us at prosa@publicinput.com. Thank you again for joining us this evening. Your input is immensely valuable to us, and we really appreciate your participation. We'd like to wish you all a very pleasant evening. Good night.